Good afternoon everyone. It's Friday afternoon yet again, and I'd like to welcome you to LSB TV, where we will be covering AAT Level 2, and I will be going through some information on the Level 2 Synoptic assessment. Firstly, I'll introduce myself. My name is Gareth Thomas and I am the course manager for the AAT, covering Levels 2, 3 and 4 at LSBF. Friday afternoon. Hopefully it's nice and relaxed where you are. You've got a little bit of time you've managed to allocate for yourselves. Maybe the boss is still on lunch, so you've actually got your feet up and sitting back and prepared to watch AAT TV. And hopefully also you will have a very enjoyable afternoon and come away with what we intend to give you at the moment. So without any further to say, I will start on the content of today's session. Now, the key features of AQ 216. I'll give you a little bit of background on the Level 2 Synoptic assessment. And when the AAT developed the new syllabus, i.e. AQ 216, which is what you've enrolled on, they worked with companies, large industrial companies in accountancy, and they had to come up with something new, something that took the AAT forward. And what happened was they came up with the idea of what we refer to as a synoptic assessment, which is something that you as students have to get to grips with and be able to pass to progress to level 3. Now, a synoptic assessment technically is a merger of all the units on a particular level and is examined by one exam across the board, which takes into account everything you've studied. So this is quite new, I would have thought, for most people coming into any sort of professional studying, in that previously, whatever you've done in the past, you would have done a unit or a topic, then an exam, and then you would have moved on. However, this is a new development, and this is where you find yourselves as students. Now, with this synoptic assessment, they also came into the concept of a grading for the qualification. So not only are you assessed on everything across the board, but you actually get graded on what you're doing. So that is something again that was developed and asked for within the industrial sector. And the grades, as I'll speak to you a little later about, fall into 3 categories, which is a pass, a merit and a distinction. So you could fall in either of those 3 bands, providing you reach above 70% as a minimum. Now, with this in mind, the AAT actually developed their product for students, and they enhanced the AAT website a great deal here, and they give students access to monitor the progress, so you can actually see as your course progresses where you are on your course and what you need to achieve to get to the next level. And you can play around on the website and find this information there, which is great because you can actually track yourselves as students. Okay, and that's all accessible through your MyAAT account. So providing you're a registered AAT student, you get access to this, along with a host of other materials from things such as the green light zone, where you can practice and go on to the next topics or more difficult areas. You can also look at the sample assessments within that, and there are plenty of sections on e-learning. So all this was developed, and that's the background really to what a synoptic assessment is all about. Now I'd like to take this a stage further. In 1 second, bear with me, and cover the units that you can expect to see under the synoptic assessment at level 2. Now, at level 2, there are 5 units in total that you will be studying. And these units are bookkeeping transactions, bookkeeping controls, elements of costing, working effectively in finance, and accounting software. And all those units need to be covered at level 2 and will form part of the synoptic, except with accounting software. And I will come to that shortly. That is not part of your synoptic assessment. So those are the units you need to cover to get the full level 2 certificate in accounting. And really, we would recommend that you actually study them in that order. because there's a natural progression. Okay, the bookkeeping transactions would always be the first unit to study, followed by bookkeeping controls and the costing units. You would then study the working effectively. Then you can schedule your synoptic assessment. Now those 4 units are all examined within the synoptic, and I'll go in a bit more detail in a second. So that's the order of study. However, if you started a course wherever you were studying had already got the course underway, or you weren't sure and you started with the costing unit, that really doesn't matter. The important thing is that the bookkeeping controls follows the bookkeeping and transactions, and that is of paramount importance because one leads to the other. So hopefully we're clear on that and the order of study that you would need. So how is this assessed? Okay. Now the units that you can see in front of you are examined individually. So the accounting software is individual, the bookkeeping transactions is individual, the bookkeeping controls is individual, and the elements of costing is individual. So all those units are examined independently. They have their own exam papers. And the idea and the ideal way of studying this would be to do one of the units, then the exam. Then go straight on to the next unit, then the exam. And that's really how training providers tend to block the course, as opposed to the traditional cover everything and do the exam at the end of a year, which maybe some of you have done that in the past. However, it would be block the unit and then progress. So those units, individual examinations. Now in addition, there's a synoptic assessment. Working effectively in finance, it has no individual exam. So I would think a lot of you go, wow, fantastic. No individual exam, that is superb. However, it is in the synoptic assessment. Okay? And just because it's got no individual exam, do not ignore it. It will be examined. It's on the syllabus for a reason. You have to cover it for a reason. So the only place the AAT can put that, in the synoptic assessment. So it forms part of your synoptic along with your bookkeeping transactions, your bookkeeping controls, and your elements of costing. So the synoptic will consist of 4 units there. Okay, so be careful. Right? Those are the 4 within that synoptic assessment. Nothing on accounting software. That's examined independently. So you can take that, preferably at the end of your level 2. And there's a logic there as well. When you come to do your accounting software, you will need to know the knowledge that you've gained in your bookkeeping units and to an extent some of the costing units. Because if you're producing journals, for instance, and you have to journalize something in accounts, you'll need to know the mechanics of that journal and think, well, why am I producing this journal? So when you come to produce that on your accounting software unit, you'll be able to click the debits and the credits, and then you will know why you've done that, because you've studied it at bookkeeping transactions or bookkeeping controls. When you have to open customer accounts and your sales daybook maybe, or your purchase daybook, you will know the logic behind that. You will know the mechanics and the underlying reasons for doing it as accountants. And those are the things that you establish under the first 2 units of bookkeeping accounting and bookkeeping controls. You will know what the sales daybook is. You will know what VAT is, and you will be able to post those to the relevant accounts and the relevant sales ledger or purchase ledger. You will be able to deal with control accounts that you will be taught within those units. You'll understand elements of payroll. So all that knowledge you're taking forward, and that would go in the accounting software, which is why it should be the last unit. Various bits of items on costing and stock valuation. Keep it until the end, and you've got that, and hopefully, and this is hopefully, the accounting software, that will be plain sailing. You will fly through that because of what you know already, and you will sit back and really enjoy that unit, as you will the rest of the course. So that is how it's examined. Now the important thing to note, which is what I was establishing there, is that the Synoptic, therefore, it contains working effectively, but it doesn't contain the accounting software. And just a little bit more on the Synoptic, because the working effectively isn't examined independently, it kind of what it does, it's the theme for the Synoptic. So you will have tasks in the Synoptic assessment, which really is based on working effectively in finance. In other words, it's what you do in your everyday jobs, a lot of you, or what you could expect to do when you work in an accounting environment. When you're given tasks to do by your line manager, or even if you're working for yourselves, how you organise your time. Okay, what is a priority and what isn't a priority? Is there a deadline or isn't there a deadline? So what do you do first? So what happens within this Synoptic, and very often the first task is based on this, is you would get something where you have to define the time limits, and then the other units get integrated into this. So it could be related to the management accounting side, which you would study, or the bookkeeping side, or there could be some reports to do. So the working effectively tends to be the spine. It's involved in a lot of tasks, and as we'll see in a minute, we'll actually find out what percentage of the level 2 is covered by your Synoptic assessment. Okay? And we'll show you actually how important it is to get to grips with this Synoptic assessment, and where it will lead you. So to recap, really, what we're trying to say there is the Synoptic assessment that you will study, it tests your understanding, okay, between all the units on level 2. So it's a cross-examination. It should be attempted on completion of the other units. Now I'm going to go back to this and talk a little bit again about this, with software being last. Before you can attempt the Synoptic assessment, you must have at least attempted what we call the 3 core units, your 2 bookkeeping units and the costing unit. So they have to be scheduled and attempted really before you do the Synoptic assessment. Accounting software doesn't fall into that sort of restriction. And the AAT won't allow you to sit the Synoptic and at least those others have been scheduled. Okay, they will flag that up at their end. Now the other thing to say on this, and the important bit, is that if you're successful at the 3 units I just mentioned, there's every chance that you will be very successful at the Synoptic. Because even though they're in there, they won't be in there in as great as depth that you have studied. It may be you have to go back and revisit some sections that you've forgotten. The AAT know this, and that's the purpose of the Synoptic. It's a good overall test of what you've gained at level 2. Accounting software at the end of Synoptic. It can be at the start. There's nothing to say it can't be first. We say it can't. Okay. At the end, please. Now, when can you sit your Synoptic assessment? Okay, really important. As I've said, it must be at the end of the units that you've already studied, the bookkeeping and the costing. But unlike levels 3 and 4 that restrict when you can sit the Synoptic assessment, level 2 doesn't. So technically, once you've got those 3 main units under your belt, you can actually schedule your Synoptic, and it's called a window of opportunity. And these windows of opportunity exist almost every week at level 2. And that should be great news for you, because when you're planning the course and your method of study and what you intend to do, you have to bring together your holidays, bring in work commitments. There might be times of the year where you're expected to be at work longer than you are. You may have planned your holidays at certain times, and unfortunately things come up and they just crop up in life. However, that doesn't really affect you at level 2, because the Synoptic assessment window is almost weekly. You need to check it out yourselves on the AAT website, but that really is good news, okay? So it sits in very flexible. Where do you get the information from? Well, what you do, you go on the AAT website and you look under training and support, study support, level 2, scan down until you find the synoptic assessment for level 2. You then have a look within that area where the green light area is, the green zone area, where your practice assessments are, where your e-learning is, and you should find an exam timetable. And that tells you when you can sit a synoptic. It gives you all the windows. So it's easy to do. It's a touch of a button really, very easy to find out when. So which order do you study? I've touched upon this, and this is our recommendation, some recapping. Okay, study in this order. This is where you get the best or the most out of what we're offering you here. And that's bookkeeping transactions, followed by controls, costing, working effectively, and using accounting software. Now, how much, very important section here guys, how much does each assessment count towards your final grade? And you as students will be interested in hopefully getting a distinction and aiming for the highest possible mark. Your employer, if you're employed, will be looking at this as well, and if you're doing this on a full-time basis in between jobs or simply returning to work, you will still want the best result for yourselves. So let's have a look at the weightings here and see, well, okay, what is weighted towards what? And the first one on this is in fact the synoptic assessment. This has got a weighting towards your overall grade of 30%. Now that's a massive weighting, and it reiterates the importance of doing very well at the synoptic assessment, because if you have a good mark at this, then whatever percentage you achieve in your synoptic multiplied by the weighting would give you a weighted mark for your synoptic assessment. Now, with 30% being such a high weighting, it's really important that you do very well within your synoptic. And I think everyone will take that on board and be quite happy with that logic. And as accountants, I mean, our brains work like this, don't they? We just work on logic. What else have we got there? What else do we need to do? Well, we need to do well at everything. Okay, you can't skip anything because it's not added in, or it's got a low weighting, because overall it's all going to get average. So let's just take a look. The accounting, in no particular order by the way, the accounting software is 16%. If that comes at the end, you should really do very well at this and get a great mark. So that's how that would work. The bookkeeping transactions, 22%, so that's quite a high weighting. It's the first unit, so we can get this out of the way, and we know where this is leading to bookkeeping controls. That's got the weighting of 16%, and then we go to elements of costing, which also has a weighting of 16%. And if you total that, that would be the 100%, which is the full qualification, and you can work out your marks as you go along. You can work out your weightings, and then you can find out what band that you're going to fall into and what is your expected overall grade, which is really useful, certainly on job interviews when you can come up with this sort of information. It shows that you've taken initiative and you've actually gone forward and you're making that effort. Almost always the difference is the student that takes initiative. So those are the weightings, which are very important. Now, the next slide, or the next section I'd like to talk about is how is assessment? How is it assessed? So how is the course assessed? But if you started, you will already know some of this, and you will know the answers. If you haven't, or simply viewing for the first time, we'll cover this with you anyway. Now, the synoptic assessment is partly human marked and partly computer marked. And you may think, well, what difference does that make? Well, it does make a difference, because the other units, with the exception of accounting software, are all human marked. Now, are all computer marked, I beg your pardon. If it's computer marked, it means you get an instant result. So you can leave the examination room basically and you will know what mark you've got, which is fantastic feedback for yourselves, so you know exactly where you are. If it's marked or human marked and computer marked, half of it or more will be marked immediately, but you won't know the answer to that. The other half, or whatever is left over, will be marked by examiners. Okay, these are specialists in the area that will mark sections for you. However, that means you won't get instant feedback. Right? So this is the difference. The feedback for you then will be given to you in 6 weeks or so. So very different approach here. Anything computer marked, immediate. Anything not computer marked, 6 weeks. And that's the same at all levels. So it's not just this level. However, what this does in your planning, this should spark thoughts in your mind thinking, okay, if I'm not successful, when can I sit the next one? You've got 6 weeks for this to run before you get your mark. So don't come up there and think, oh, I haven't done very well. Wait for your result, and then at level 2, you can almost do it immediately if things go disastrously wrong or you can't turn up for whatever reason. All right, so rest assured, there's plenty of opportunity. How much time have we got for each assessment? Again, very important, and actually this is subject to change. Okay, not yet, but the dates will be on the AAT website. It's very new information that's been published by the AAT on this. But as it stands, okay, as we stand here at the moment, the Synoptic assessment, you have 2 hours to do this, and that should give you ample time to get through on Synoptic. Your accounting software, you've got 2 hours. However, there's an additional hour for uploading if you need that hour. It's Slack that's been built in by the AAT, just in case there are problems. They're not expecting any, and your exam venue won't expect any. However, if there are, I mean, it's covered. There is certainly enough additional time scheduled. Bookkeeping transactions, bookkeeping controls, 2 hours each. So that's pretty consistent. And then your costing is 90 minutes. You will have ample time. The bookkeeping transactions and controls are going to be changing down to 90 minutes. But I haven't got the dates as of yet. I would watch this page, get on the AAT website. Providing you're a registered student, you get access to this information. So you will be able to find this. So beware and look for that. It's the same content, by the way. It's just they're giving students less time to complete it. But that's all the information I've got at the moment on that. But those are the time limits. So, to recap, all assessments marked by the AAT. We all know that. Some computer marked, some human marked, some a mixture of both. Mainly computer marked. Key features, qualification grading. Now, back to the grades. You will get an overall grade on completion depending on your percentage for each unit. So how is it banded? Now, I think I touched on this a little earlier and said that it would be banded in certain sections. And let's just take a look at these bands. And what we've got for a pass, you need to get between 70 and 79% overall. So one individual you could do very well on, another not so well, and when you weight it up, it would give the average at the end. However, we need to do well at everything, and we know that. Okay. Merit is 80 to 89%, and the distinction is between 90 and 100%. That is not out of the question at all. At level 2, there's quite a high percentage of students that come up with an overall distinction, and that's what you should be. Within that band, within the high band, and it's always aiming for the highest and practicing. So, what approach do we take, everyone? I mean, what's the best approach for this? Well, what we are saying is practice the questions in whatever kits you're using. Okay, whatever study text that you've decided to adopt or use yourself, make sure you practice them enough. I mean, that is the essence of getting through any exam. It's actually putting your head down and getting on with things. Okay, that's the important bit. Use the AAT website for material and guidance. Now, as students, you've got access to an awful lot of material on that website. There's so many sections on there, and if you've got an area which is causing you problems, as well as revisiting that area, then go onto the website and see if there's a green light area or an e-learning section that you can have a look at and practice and ask any questions on. So that's really important. So do that. What we always tell students, and this is the trap, everybody, is don't look at the answers, okay? You're not looking at the answers and trying to assimilate the question, which is so easy to do, and it's such an easy way out, but we've all been there, and we've all done that. This is why we sort of point this out. So when you do the question, look at the question and produce something. Certainly on the synoptics, as well as everything else, produce an answer. Then look at the answer and see how close you've got to that answer. And remember, of course, you will never get exactly the same as a model answer in anything that you're writing. Okay, there may be some slight differences, but you will be able to pick up the overall theme. You will know if you're quite near the mark on that. But don't look at the answer and then look at the question and think, I've got it. I don't need to do that anymore, because that is totally the wrong way around, and you don't actually learn anything. Weaker areas, concentrate on your weaker areas. And again, it's something we as students, we don't like this. Things we're weak at, oh, well, I won't do that, I'll avoid that. I'll go on to this other one because I like it. And it makes me feel happy because I've got it all right. However, you should be doing a little less on that and go into those areas that you don't like, and working hard on those areas. So that's what we would recommend. Now, what we like to say is to enjoy your studies, obviously, and good luck, and hope you've enjoyed watching this program today, and look forward to seeing you next week. And I will conclude shortly. So everyone, thank you very much for tuning in. Hopefully you've enjoyed that session, and you're sitting back and relaxed, and you've got a lot of information that's come through today from us. And mainly what we're looking and what you're looking to get out of this is what a synoptic assessment is, and we should have established that. How it's marked and how long it takes to get your mark fed back to you. What sort of grades you can get at level 2. In which particular order you should be studying the units. Okay, and concentrating on the weaker areas. We're also looking at the grades, pass, merit, distinction, and your approach to study. So hopefully you've enjoyed it. Please join us next week where we'll cover a question and the assessment criteria in detail. Thank you very much, and goodbye.